I'm Shannon.
And I'm Mark.
And this is Dirt Sailor the Podcast. On this episode of Dirt Sailor the Podcast, there's a 250% increase in your grocery bill. Happy Throat Punch Thursday.
Well, happy Throat Punch Thursday. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good now that I'm not choking on my milk.
Good. Apparently that was going around because I was choking on my coffee earlier. Now you're choking on your milk. And
Crazy.
you just need to quit choking.
Yep.
Do you know what we need, though?
What do we need?
We need to be illegal immigrants and cross at Arizona's southern border.
You know, somebody made a statement along those lines this morning at work.
Really?
Yes. That if you wanted good insurance and you wanted good education, good schooling, food stamps, whatever, you know, all the stuff to sustain you through life in America, just come up south of the border.
Yep, south of the border or crossing the border, they're being handed, at least the claim is, $5,000 in good as cash gift cards, along with cell phones and costly plane tickets, all of which are paid for by your tax dollars.
Well, it sure the heck isn't Biden's tax dollars.
No, because he doesn't pay any taxes.
Right, nor does his son.
No, they like to avoid taxes by lying and saying that they're employing people or they have memberships. Apparently golf memberships are ordinarily a tax write-off, and well, when you have a gentleman's club membership, you can also call that a golf membership and write it off.
Gentleman's club membership. I'm going to have to look into that. But, you know, I think that we need Hunter Biden to write a book.
So he can get paid for that too, or
teach us how to do what he has done.
Yeah, so I guess the book would be How to Be an Elected Leader's Son. Use that connection to make yourself boatloads of money and then avoid indictment until public scrutiny gets so great that they just can't get away with not indicting anymore.
Right. But the major crimes that were committed tax-wise, they were smart enough to let the statute of limitations run out. And I'm curious as to why is there a statute of limitations on taxes? I thought that they could go after you for 20 years.
Maybe only criminally? Like they can still go after the money and penalize you, but criminally?
Okay,
perhaps?
So they can only get you as a criminal, which is what you are when you have 20 shell companies.
Yes, all your shell companies. So they did decide to impanel a federal grand jury out of Los Angeles. So maybe it was also getting it off the East Coast that helped. And mind you, Hunter Biden lived out in California, and I believe he continues to technically live in California. They are paying thousands of dollars a month to live out here in California, along with the Secret Service, who has a neighboring property that we get to pay for as taxpayers.
Conspiracy theory, mark my words. Some of the folks that are on this panel, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 people, are probably political donors to the Democrats or the Bidens. It appears that these people are slick when they say the deep state, people that have been in politics a lifetime have an end. Now looking at Nikki Haley, these people really have an end. Once they've been in politics, even for a short amount of time, they must do a cost-benefit analysis on whether to be honest or corrupt, and they skirt that fine line between right and wrong.
Right. Well, Hunter Biden didn't skirt any lines. He just didn't care. And according to the indictment, he owed taxes for years 2016 through 2019. He failed to pay at least $1.4 million in taxes. So when Joe Biden talks about the wealthy not paying their fair share, do you think it includes Hunter Biden? I mean, making multiple millions, which is what he's done, even if it's wrongfully off of his father's name, making multiple millions during that time frame, at least 7 million that they found. Isn't he the millionaire class that Joe Biden constantly says needs to pay their fair share?
100%. But when you're a family member of Joe, you get away with things.
Right, not only get away with it, but when asked about it, it's, oh, I love my son. Oh, poor Hunter Biden. He had a drug problem. It's not his fault. My only, being Joe Biden, my only crime is loving my son too much.
Well, Hunter's still throwing the drug card out there. And it's unfortunate that he was addicted to drugs because he probably did some things that he shouldn't have. And I'm not talking about the money laundering. That's a whole separate sidebar issue. Some of the other criminality that he's done is inexcusable, and he should be punished and have to pay for it. But it gives his family members, his kids, and other children. Let me back up. When you have somebody that should be looked up to and they have the lifestyle that he has, it ruins his kids, probably for life. And it gives other kids that are on the outside looking in the impression that it's okay to do things like this when it's not.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. If you see this and you see what he's doing, you get this lifestyle, then okay, who else gets to do this? Who else gets to get away with other crimes too? A crime for us regular random folk. Speaking of who else gets to do things, did you know that the stock portfolio of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and her amazing husband, Paul Pelosi, he has such an eye for investing, they experienced such massive growth in 2023. And so did other members of Congress. They're not the only ones to increase their wealth. But according to a tool that replicates the trades executed by members of Congress and their families, they've experienced more than a 20% or nearly a 20% gain this year, outperforming the stock market average of 8 to 10%. They are outperforming by twice or more than what the stock market is doing.
They're outperforming experts.
Yes.
You know why? Because they are the experts. They're writing the rules.
And that's just that's members of Congress, Nancy Pelosi and other members of Congress. There is actually a separate tool dedicating to solely tracking Nancy Pelosi's investments. And according to this tool, her rate of return is 50% in the last 12 months.
She needs to write a book for us too.
Absolutely. What do you think the odds are that Mr. Paul Pelosi, is so great that he can outperform the stock market in such massive levels? Like, not just a little bit. He's not just an edge above the rest, that he just has this keen eye. He reads the reports. He's a mathematical genius.
Well, who's one of the CEOs of Berkshire Hathaway? His name is slipping me right now. It'll be right to me. I'll recall it here in a second. It's rolling around in my Rolodex in my head.
That's going to be Warren Buffett.
Yes, I believe that Warren Buffett is a better investor than Nancy Pelosi's husband, but I don't think even Warren Buffett's rate of return
is 50.
Is that high, is 50%. That's global crime.
It is, because on our investments, if we even get a 12%, we're considered doing remarkably well.
Well, let me
on average over the last 50 years.
Yes, for 2023, as of right now, my return on investment for my 401k is 9.5%.
Yes. So I will say too, my return on investment, I do have a 401k that I rolled in with an investor from my years of working. And for this year, doing better. But my recovery from the trash that has happened over the last 2 years, I am still negative.
Light years behind.
Yes.
So as am I. 80 to 100 to 150 to $200,000 behind.
It just keeps going down and not to recover.
Correct.
On the overall scheme of things, they'll give you a little bit back and you're like, okay, I'm doing better. And then they take more away. And then they give a little bit back and then they take more away.
See, and I think that's designed, honestly. I really, you want to talk about conspiracies. I think that there's some ultra math genius within DC that looks at these numbers and, somebody please tell me if they think I'm crazy, but they allow so many Americans to amass so much wealth. and then there is a shift change, so to speak, with an administration, and then your percentages go down to where you lose up to 50% of your investment. So that's a lot of money that's gone that goes back into the coffers of the federal government.
So not just that. I'm with you. You know me in conspiracies. It's probably why I'm your daughter. I'm with you on that. Something that a book that I just read, Control Oligarchs, Exposing the Billionaire Class, Their Secret Deals, and the Globalist Plot to Dominate Your Life. I would recommend the read. It's got a bit of a slant, and I'm sure every book does have a slant, depending on which way you're looking at someone or something. It even talks about Elon Musk, his good and his bad, because he has both. He does some of the same things these other billionaires do. He's not immune from doing it. But something that the government likes to do, and we see this more and more, which is they pick the winners and losers, and we've talked about this before, but when the winners and losers benefit these billionaires. So the billionaires support the president, typically, or people in the House or people in the Senate. And then in turn, their return on investment is just astronomical. So Bill Gates, as an example, he foresaw the need for a COVID-19 vaccine. And so they were actually working on the vaccine techniques right when they needed it the most. And he invested in the right companies, invested in the right things. So he had such a high return on investment from our pandemic.
That's how he was able to buy the machines to invent that fake meat. Man,
all of his returns.
He is just a genius. A guy that stole his Microsoft info to become the billionaire he is. And it's not me saying it. Read the books. Look at history. He stole what he has.
Yeah, so he was a part that this book actually touches on that too. So he was a part of a computer club back in the day when computers were very expensive to run. He was a part of this computer club. Ultimately, he would get kicked out of the computer club because they didn't like him and what he was doing. He would try to be too controlling. And he admits that he took from others to basically market what would become Microsoft, the operating system. And it also, and again in this book and in other books, many other books, this isn't the only book that talks about it, but he gets his start because his mother was a debutante, his father a wealthy lawyer, and they had the connections to IBM and the CEO of IBM and convinced the CEO to take Microsoft's operating system invention, so Bill Gates' quote unquote invention, and put it on their computers when nobody else had that ability, access, and Bill Gates didn't even have the history of proving that he could make this thing work.
But when you read their books, they started out from humble beginnings and they had to work their way up from the bottom up. I don't think so.
All trash, lies.
I don't think so.
He already had the in based on who his parents were and their connections and how that went down. Among the other things, he was known as a jerk who would go and force out any competition that he possibly could, including stealing. He found a legal way to steal from Apple when they were their biggest competitor, in fact, a bigger competitor than they were. And he found a way to take their proprietary information and make it his own, but they found essentially a legal loophole to do so. So, but continuing to go down the conspiracy theory tunnel.
Let's do it.
So in this conspiracy theory, so what if states that are passing the laws to decriminalize theft under $900, in California it'd be $950, are actually secretly being pushed by Walmart, Amazon, Target, and the big names under equity rationale, but are really just attempts of the big businesses to run small businesses out of business altogether?
Oh, trying to finish the small business off?
Yes.
I would agree with that because small business used to be the only business. And once all these little oligopolies and these monopolies really got rolling, they basically took out a majority of small ownership. So now they're going to finish them off once and for all.
And in fact, the lockdowns were a wonderful strategy to close down all the mom and pops, because how many places did you hear about that had to close because of lockdowns? But then Target, Walmart, etc. were allowed to remain open. Amazon grew substantially, and mom and pops that sold the very same things as Target or Amazon or Walmart had to shut down.
Yes, and interesting that we had to shut down churches that had maybe 50 to 100 members, yet you could have a Costco that had 500 people in it or 1,000 people in it at one time.
Right. And there were churches that started holding services in the middle of Walmart. Yeah. So it's just another way for the biggies, the billionaire class, the biggies to take over and make sure that they continue to be on top. And this is something that I've talked about before as crony capitalism. I don't believe in crony capitalism. I believe in capitalism and your ability to work and grow yourself and make it to the top. But these individuals are working with our supposed leadership to make sure that real winners and real losers are picked by them, either in the House, in the Senate, or the billionaires themselves.
Yes, and there's a certain point when they're working their way up towards the top that there's a fork in the road, and they all tend to take the fork to the left or to the right. That puts them in a position where all they have to do is know someone. All they have to do is spend a little bit of money, i.e. investments in a politician, and then they shoot to the stratosphere.
Yes, and with Bill Gates, he was getting a name for himself as quite the jerk. And he was driving people out of business, suing people out of business, taking over their businesses, squashing them out, making sure they could not exist. He would, I can't remember what the book called it, but basically he had a cycle of how to take out other competition. And when he had made such a bad name for himself, it was determined that he had to work to change his image. So that's when you get the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And he starts acting like an altruistic, nicey nice guy. And that was to change the appearance of his name. He is still the jerk who is trying to squeeze others out of business. And he found a new way to do it, which is to donate money into his foundation and then do those very things that will actually line his pocketbook on the backside. So he gets to invest in research, make the money, and then all that money is just a gain for all of the money he's pledged to give away. Because he said he was one of those that pledged to give away 90% of his money or something like that. For every dollar he's given away, he makes 2 back.
What?
Yeah, it's not like he's actually giving it away. He is investing in such a way that his giveaway has a return on investment.
Well, that's how he became a billionaire. And it's not by giving his money away and not having something in return. And I'll bet you if you go all the way back to his junior high days or elementary school days, he was probably a little jerk back then. And you see it in all of them. You see it in all these guys that are born with a pedigree, that have a previous family that's in money. They just shoot right to the top. It's a very small percentage, probably 5%, if I had to guess, that actually make it in true capitalism. Because once you get to a certain point, then the IRS starts nailing you, and then state taxes nail you, and then local taxes and fees, and people are not happy with how the plight of the homeless is going, so they start taking more money from you, i.e. by extra phone bills, little percentages in your phone bill, a little bit in your electricity, a little bit in your water.
And now with your trash, because here in California, one nice thing about living where we live is we were actually able to compost our own green waste. We did not have to have a green waste yard service or organic service because we are able to compost it and to make our own pile and turn it and reuse it. But in its infinite wisdom, the state of California has decided that every single person is required to have a green waste bin. And this green waste bin / organics bin costs more as a single bin than either our recycling or our trash. It was adding over $480 a year in just that service.
Yeah, and there's no choice in the matter either. You don't get a choice. What happened to America where we were great because we had voting rights and we had choices?
And now, okay, so now I don't have a trash service because of how much it was going to make our annual bill go up by. So now I have to self-haul.
I was going to say, oh, you have a trash service.
And I self-haul it over to my parents' house and I fill up their bin, just the excess space that they have in their bin.
Well, it's because we're just two people, so there isn't a lot of garbage out of this house. There may be garbage coming out of my mouth, but...
No, but our green waste, just to give an idea, like our limbs and our trees and stuff, we could fill the organic green waste bin every single week from bottom to top, and we still have more than that bin can handle. And that was for $480 a year. We would still have to haul to a green waste service every year, multiple times anyway.
Well, you do live on a humble, small piece of property that has a lot of...
The prior owner planted a lot of trees, and they are all mature, and they are all helping to add to...
Your green waste.
The green waste.
Yes.
But that's just another thing where California is like, let's nickel and dime the next person, because there are people on a fixed income. Our income isn't wholly fixed. Technically, it doesn't meet the definition of a fixed income because my husband is a salary man. He has a job with a salary. And then mine is disability. So mine is fixed, and his, theoretically, he could get a raise, or theoretically, well, he can't work overtime because he's salary. He could get a second job and we wouldn't be living on a quote unquote fixed income in that regard. But how many people are living on a fixed income that can take on an additional $480 a year because they decided you composting at home is not enough, is not good enough?
Well, and there's a lot that can't, especially considering their fixed income may be based on, say they retired 10 years ago. So it was based on dollars 10 years ago, not now.
Yes. So let's speak of dollars 10 years ago or dollars 30 years ago, etc. A meme, picture, truth bomb, whatever you want to call it, has come out, and it had to do with Home Alone. Now, I don't know if you remember the movie Home Alone. It came out in 1990. Kevin McAllister is at home because he is forgotten by the family when they go on their vacation. Well, he goes to the grocery store because he needed some basic supplies while his family was gone. The basic supplies included a half gallon of milk, a half gallon of orange juice, TV dinner, bread, frozen mac and cheese, laundry detergent, cling wrap, toilet paper, and a pack of Army Men along with some dryer sheets. Back in 1990, this cost $19.83. If he had to buy it today, what do you think that his grocery list would be?
$42.10.
Oh, sorry. You're wrong. $72.28.
What?
However, if he was shopping last year, you would have been nearly spot on, $44.40.
Ooh.
So when you're talking about someone who may have retired 10 years ago on a fixed income and had a certain amount of money set aside each year, or 5 years ago on a fixed income, or 30 years ago, perhaps they are in their 90s. They retired at 62 and they're 92 now, and they are still living on that same fixed income. 1 year to the next. 2023 compared to 2022, there is a nearly approximate $28 difference that your grocery bill, just the groceries that I mentioned, cost from last year to this year. $28. And that is a very small list. That's not a very big list.
No, and with Let's add everything else in there. Let's throw some more stuff in the pile with the cost of fuel. So say an older person has to drive to the grocery store. Now, instead of it costing, say they live in a rural area and they've got to drive 10 miles or 15 miles to go get groceries.
So 15 miles round trip, assuming you have a car that gets 30 miles to the gallon and not 15 miles to the gallon, depending
Right.
on how old your car is.
And I'm assuming if it's an older retired person, they're going to have an older car. It's not going to get that kind of mileage. So they're getting socked in the gut.
$8 just to go to the grocery store.
If they're on the East Coast, heating oil is up dramatically. So to heat their homes, that's up like threefold in cost right now. And they're wanting to get rid of the coal burning stuff back there for heating their homes and the oil fired furnaces.
In addition, they also want to make sure California, you have to pay additional just for the luxury of being hooked up to PG&E and having an income. They want to charge you more. We're about to see that rolling into next year.
Boy, we could really pitch a whiny little thing here, huh?
We could pitch a whiny little thing. I think, though, just to your point real quick about New York and driving in somewhere, provided a lot of people end up walking. So New York wants to have a daily driver rate for you driving in New York. So New York City's MTA board approved a New York City congestion pricing plan, which will charge drivers a daily tax to drive their vehicles. The taxes will be as follows. $15 for passenger vehicles, that's $5,475 annually. Trucks are going to be $24 to $36 a day, so it could be up to $13,140 annually. Motorcycles, $7.50 a day, $2,737.50 annually. That is to drive into New York during the so-called congestion hours.
So they want to push people onto public transportation. Like
yes.
Subway trains and buses, which are not safe.
The same public transportation that even the mayor of New York City said he didn't feel safe riding. And that would be 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays and 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends. No days off. Congestion all the time.
Who put these Ponzi schemes together to take your money from you? I mean, that's a good thing. It's a tax. It's a tax. Let's tax you. Let's do some fees. At what point do people finally say, you know what? No more. You're not taking. Oh, wait a minute. They are. That's why they're moving out of New York and California by the thousands.
Yes. And it's why food banks are currently struggling to keep up, to provide for basic needs that people are struggling to provide for their own needs. So we have food banks. That's how we help in our communities. Food banks cannot keep up because of the current food crisis situation, how much things are costing, and the fact that people can't keep up with their own bills. So then, speaking of can't keep up with your own bills and people moving out, here in California, we were told we had a smidgen of a budget deficit, maybe a little bit more of a budget deficit. Oh, it's not that bad of a budget deficit. People are overreacting of a budget deficit. Well, right now it's estimated to be $68 billion. $68 billion deficit. That's how many people have moved out of California that they did not collect in taxes, the income taxes that they thought they were going to collect on.
So, our governor and his accountants aren't as smart as they think they are they?
Oh, absolutely not. They do all their fine math telling us how great everything's going to be. And then all of a sudden we're $68 billion in the hole.
But wouldn't that be like our president who says that the economies are fine, who vacations on the beach at a multi-million-dollar place that he rightfully shouldn't own because his lifetime income doesn't match the toys he has? Yet people around America are struggling to put fuel in their vehicles, groceries on the table for their kids. And I'm sure a lot of them at Christmas time this year are going to have to rely on the Christmas trees in the Paneras and the Costcos and other places that people that have a little bit of extra money have to pluck a name off to buy them a gift for Christmas.
We're definitely there with the need that everybody is ending up in this place of need, just trying to make the basics happen, even though they arguably bring in a good income. What used to be a good income is now not meeting basic needs because of everything that the amazing state of California, state of New York, and the federal government have pushed. We are in this position of not being able to meet basic needs and needing assistance from others.
Well, are people in leadership around the U.S. that ignorant? Are they that blind to the truth of what's going on? Do they not care? Are they insulated from reality by their handlers? What's the story? Because this is the same cyclical story that happens year in and year out and year in and year out. Hey, you're in, no, you're out.
Yeah. Well, it would be interesting. They're such narcissists. Would we ever know if they really, do they really believe these things that they're selling? Or do they know that it's a bad deal? If you look at the state of California and you look at our pie in the sky, we want to have free education for everybody, free housing for everybody. We're going to fix the homeless problem. We're going to say we're going to give millions and billions of dollars to schools because we're failing our kids educationally. So we're going to give more there. And what do we say in response? Well, we'll just tax the rich some more. We'll just tax the rich. They're not paying their fair share. We'll just tax the rich. Now our budget deficit, which was originally projected to be $14 billion, is now $68 billion, either because they're idiots with math or they didn't realize how many people moved out or they thought they can tax their way out of this problem. But that is nearly a quarter of our annual budget in California.
That's what you're going to hear from these folks too, is that the millionaires and billionaires are not paying enough. They're not paying their fair share. They need to pay more.
And that's the response for everything, is they aren't paying enough. We never learn what enough is. They just say that phrase, they aren't paying enough. I mean, obviously the Bidens are paying enough. They just mean everybody else. Obviously Nancy Pelosi's paying enough. They just mean everybody else.
Well, it'd be interesting if we could talk to our corporate fathers like that, or our management group that runs our companies that we work for, and say, hey, you're just not paying enough.
Right? You just need to pay more.
You need to pay me more.
It's never enough.
I don't care if I'm working harder. I'm showing up every day. You just need to pay more.
And another thing that we're doing in our millionaires and billionaires and everyday people not paying enough. But what are we doing as a whole country? What are we doing with the United States? So in our world of stopping climate change, the Biden administration has announced that the U.S. is on track to spend more than $9 billion on climate finance internationally in 2023. So it's estimated that the U.S. would spend at least $9.5 billion on climate programs in 2023, which is nearly $4 billion more than last year. We are spending billions so other people will transition away from that evil, non-renewable fuel source.
Well, we've been pumping oil out of the ground for over 100 years now, so I would say it's pretty renewable.
But here we are spending billions on everybody else. And then our response is we just need to tax the rich.
Well, they keep thinking that's how we keep friends that don't like us.
Giving them money?
Yeah, that's why we send money to Jordan and to the Gaza Strip, to the Palestinians there, and to others around the world, because that's how we make friends. You pay for them. Unfortunately, a lot of countries we send money to and you pay for your friendship,
they still don't like you.
They don't want your friendship. They still don't like you.
But you can give us more money.
Same countries we send millions to say on a regular basis, death to America.
Absolutely.
So is that death to America, the land, or is that death to America, the citizens? Because if they got to know the citizens outside of the government, We're really nice people.
Would they think of us differently if they weren't just seeing the government?
Yes, if they weren't judging us based on appearance.
So something else as far as the way we spend money. So when Democrats controlled Congress during Joe Biden's first 2 years as president, they passed spending bills that were worth trillions of dollars. Some of those were supposed to be to get the economy back on track, and others were green energy agenda. So that included the construction of a network of 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations, because we do have a significant infrastructure issue because they are pushing so many electric vehicles to be purchased and used, but we don't have the place for them to be charged that we so desperately need. But here we are 2 years later from the passage of these, and the funding's supposed to be there, that not a single EV charging station has been built despite the legislation earmarking $7.5 billion to that effort. There are 8 stations that are under construction, but they are not yet completed. And the measure itself called for a network of hundreds of thousands. And we have 8 underway, under
We're
construction.
getting there very slowly. Just give them the opportunity. By the time we are done with electric cars and we're on to a new mode of transportation, they'll have the last one done. They'll be able to go ahead and retire them and start with the next fuel.
And then if you look at what they're doing, if you look at who Biden is backing and who Biden is giving the money to and who ultimately wins these construction projects or who wins this project or that project, it is somebody who is donated to his campaign or other Democrats over and over again too. So a lot of these things that end up being like the bridge to nowhere are
cronies. Capitalism.
Yes, cronies, and they are getting money off of it, and we are not seeing any bang for our buck. If electric vehicles were truly as efficient and as pie in the sky amazing as they say, the companies would be all over building these charging stations in these vehicles. And now people are moving away from the electric vehicles. The companies aren't wanting to build them because they are not as efficient, and they have to strip mine the earth to get there, to get what we do get.
100%. So, question.
Shoot.
Joe Biden classified top secret documents in his Corvette, around his Corvette, in his garage, in
his tailpipe.
Yeah, in Delaware, right?
Yeah, in Delaware and in several other locations as well. As far as with the Corvette, that would have been in Delaware.
So I wonder how often, the question I have is how often he drives the car. The reason I ask is he used the car in a 2020 campaign ad, a video. And the documents were found in 2023, 2022?
2022, I believe.
Okay, so we have 2 years of potentially the car not being used. Who put those documents there? Why would they just mysteriously appear in the car if he's driving the car on a regular basis? Wait a minute. Wasn't there a video of his son?
Yes.
And a couple of cousins?
So he likes to drive his relatives, his young relatives, in the car. It's kind of a cool way to be cool uncle or cool dad type of thing. So he would drive relatives around in the car, and they've actually gone back, and on a day where he is seen with the car, the boxes are there. Hunter Biden specifically, because I believe once you're president, so now starting January of 2021, once you're president, I am of the understanding, and maybe this is a misrepresentation, but you're not allowed to drive for yourself anymore. That it's a safety and security issue. Now, I could be mistaken. Maybe they let you do it on a kind of a closed loop or a closed course or something of that nature. So now that he's president, I don't believe he's actually allowed to drive.
Well, I wonder if he has cameras
anymore. In and around the
house.
Well, so do you recall what year he bought that property?
No. I know he got a smoking deal.
Okay, so it looks like he bought the property. This article is dated 2017. So it looks like he bought it in 2017. So the property records do not yet show how much he sold the home for, but it was listed around $3 million. It was sold in 2007 for $3.258 million. And yeah, so it looks like he bought it in 2017. And he bought it within that 6-month period of him no longer being the vice president. So wouldn't the Secret Service have gone over that place with a fine-tooth comb?
That's what I'm trying to put the times and the pictures of all this stuff in my head. Just like him buying the beach house for, I believe it was $2.75 million in cash. And then his other home, and I think he has a third home or had a third home. And he's a senator for the longest time, then a VP, then an unemployed VP.
$2.75 million cash just to go. And it was purchased on June 8th, 2017. So he got it for under what the individual was selling it for and under what it was originally sold for as well in 2007. Although 2007 was high market goes down and then comes back up. But that's a pretty significant price cut, $250,000 price cut at least. So he gets to buy these homes for cash. How do you have $2.75 million in cash? I understand if you invested well as far as your retirements. I believe they claim that it's from the sale of his book or Jill's book or...
So crony capitalism, they were paid by...
The book publishers.
The book publishers who just wanted that name brand. Well, the VP only makes $145,871. So if you're buying multiple homes, you're buying multiple vehicles, you're putting your sons through a couple of the most prestigious colleges.
And I believe they went to prestigious prep schools too.
So then you're mortgaging your future or you're borrowing against the future or something.
So my understanding on some of what he did before is his other house that he claimed nearly burnt down in a house fire, which it was a small kitchen fire. But anyway, that house, it was my understanding that he mortgaged that house as it became worth more money to help put his kids through school and to help his family.
It'd be a heck of a loan, because how much is a lending institution going to loan you on a second for a house to put kids into schools that run, $50,000 a semester? And if they're staying on campus, it's even more.
Yeah, so he did it off of his Senate salary, his wife being a teacher, and then all of a sudden they had all this money from book deals that they claim that they used the book deal money to turn around and pay cash for a beach home.
Well, you know who else did something similar to that I just learned about the last few days, and it kind of bites the way we have to learn it, which was through the Republican debate and Vivek Ramaswamy going after Nikki Haley, calling her a criminal or a crook, and she technically is not. What she did was exactly the same thing that the Bidens, the Schumers, the Clintons, all these other people do, the Pelosis, because the word on the street is when she left office, she was $1 million in debt.
Left office as in the governor in South Carolina.
She was $1 million in debt. Within 2 years, she wrote a book, wrote a memoir, and conveniently was given a position on the board of directors for a very large corporation. And her net worth was $8 million. That's a heck of a return on investment in a couple of years.
Yeah, for Biden leaving office in 2017 as the VP, making a low six-figure salary, he then in 2017 earned $11.1 million. That was between speeches and book deals.
He's a special guy too.
Yes, $11 million as soon as you get out of office. So if you make $11 million, you can pay $2.75 million in cash for a home.
Yes, you could. Unfortunately, I bet that money was not earned earnestly, because all these people, all these names I've named, seem to all be able to do that, yet the common person can't.
No, absolutely. The common person can't. And in fact, talking about whether or not it's a conspiracy with the book companies, there is a claim that even though Joe Biden what they do is they give an advance off of these books. And then they say that's in anticipation of how well they believe it will sell. Then as they sell the books, Joe Biden will make no money until that advance has been paid back. That's why it's called an advance. But there's a claim that even though he was on the New York Times bestseller list, that he was selling less than 10,000 copies from release in that period of time. So here he is not selling books.
So then that's not a best-selling book.
No, because, what's his name? James Patterson actually put the New York Times on blast because he had the numbers from the books manufacturers and how many units were going out, how much they were selling. And one of his books, it had to do with like police officers and backing the blue or something. It was stories of police officers, was selling better than a book that was higher than his on the New York Times bestsellers list. He was actually selling better. He's not saying he should have been number one for this book, but the books that were rating higher than him at that time were doing worse. And so he called them out because they have funny math and funny numbers on how they decide what's the bestseller. And he believed that because it was during a time where people were not as kind towards police officers and didn't like police officers, that they pushed his book down on the bestseller list despite how well it was selling, because they didn't want to be seen as pushing books.
Right, so they're picking winners and losers.
Yes.
Just like country western radio stations do when there's a song that they want to climb the charts, they will play that thing 1,000,000 times a day.
So everybody knows it and it's played that many times, so then that gets the numbers. Yeah, so there are books for Biden that he is not actually making. He never should have received the advance that he did because it wasn't.
Just like Hillary Clinton, it was a stinker.
Yes.
Just like Michelle Obama, it was a stinker. Nobody should have bought the books and read them.
Well, and Obama is a retelling of his history over and over again. How many books can you write about yourself? He's writing all of these biographies biographies about yourself. Can you write about anything else? No? How many biographies do you need of yourself?
Well, apparently he has a Netflix movie out that he was part of.
Oh, yeah?
Has to do with taking over the computer systems in America or something like that. Some interesting theme. I don't know.
So getting back around to Hunter Biden, though, he did just give an interview that was released last week. And he claims that Republicans are trying to kill him because if Republicans can kill Hunter, then they know that Joe Biden will just fall apart because of his love for his son. So they're trying to kill Hunter to get at Joe Biden to stop him from being president again. That's his claim.
All the drugs Hunter did, I'm surprised he hasn't killed himself.
You can probably kill a mule. But yes, amazing that he's still alive, given apparently how much he paid for drugs, how much he did drugs, the benders that he would go on. But I just find it really interesting that Hunter Biden would say that they're trying to kill him to destroy the presidency. Yes. That's their ultimate end goal.
And think maybe conspiracy. Hunter's embellishing all the drugs he did and all that stuff, and it's maybe he did do drugs, but it's all really not.
Maybe he was sober during some of these times.
Yes.
But if he committed the act, well, if he commits the acts while on drugs, maybe they can't tie him to knowingly, fraudulently, whatever it is. But So far, I mean, House investigators have revealed bank records detailing 15 million in payments from Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Romania to numerous members of the Biden family. They're showing all of these things that Hunter Biden has done, all of these connections between Joe Biden's public statements about withholding money to Ukraine until a certain prosecutor who was looking into Hunter Biden's company was fired. Those things are out in public view.
However, there's no evidence.
There is no is. I just thought that was an interesting point of view from Hunter Biden, that Republicans are trying to kill him, and that's how they'll destroy a potential second election of Joe Biden.
Well, I don't want anybody to kill anybody, but I hope he doesn't have a second term.
My pocketbook can't take it.
No. Agreed.
So a follow-up to our discussion on that Louisiana Parish, Cato Parish sheriff's runoff, a judge has decided to void the election where the Democrat won by a single vote after discovering that the balloting was rife with fraud.
Hanky panky.
So if our listeners remember, they could only actually review 17% of the ballots because the other 83% were electronic and had no way to review the record. That was the claim, that they couldn't review it because it was just a number, a tally. So this particular judge found that it was proven beyond any doubt that there were at least 11 illegal votes cast and counted, and that it is legally impossible to know what the true vote should have been. And the part of the reason they only had to find 11 because it was a difference of one vote. But they found people who double voted. They found people who could not vote, were voting, so basically unqualified individuals, and 5 absentee ballots or mail-in ballots were counted despite not adhering to whatever their law was. And the article I read did not state what they didn't adhere to, if it's a signature date.
Did these people knowingly, and I say these people, the ones running for office, knowingly know people were cheating? Were they aware of it?
No. There was nothing that I saw said that those two people knew about it, but that it did happen, that they were able to prove that there were irregularities.
It's amazing that they can parse it down to one single vote. So if you do it based on the population in that county, and then you move that election to Georgia, and you look at how close it was there, it very well could have happened there, or it could have happened in Maricopa County.
Yes, and there were even instances in Maricopa County where the lines were so long and they had no idea how long people were going to have to wait, that people either had to go pick up their kids from daycare, have to get their kids from school, have to go home and cook dinner, couldn't wait around all night long. And so they got out of line. They weren't allowed to vote again because once the time was up, the time was up. Only if you were in line could you finish. But all of these anomalies that would cost people the ability to vote. And that doesn't even have to be someone's illegal actions, but actually, how do we even have a system that we do so poorly every year, every other year, every 4 years, depending on what's being voted on in the area?
When computer systems and IT people and everything that goes along with, like Microsoft and Apple and all the other software developers, it's supposed to be our thing.
We should have this thing down pat.
Yes, we should be the cream of the crop.
And yet we're not. And I understand that different jurisdictions, different states are allowed to hold it in whatever manner they have desired to hold it in, whether that's paper ballots, punching system, electronic, etc. And I'm not saying that I want the federal government to dictate to everyone how to do it, but do you think within all of these jurisdictions, we all would have nailed it down in the manner in which we've chosen to do it?
We're not a bunch of backwards hillbillies around this country. We're pretty sophisticated people. We should be smart enough, like you said, to do one national vote every 4 years for president and get it right.
Yes.
Not have cheaters. You want to cheat, go to Vegas. You want somebody that can run the country, that has a head on their shoulders, that doesn't have dementia or momentary lapses of reason. You don't cheat. This is what you get. You get money taken out of your checking account. You get fuel taken out of your car. You get power taken out of your house, all in the name of putting somebody in there with a D after their name or an R that they think is the right person. Well, stop cheating.
100%. And in news of following up on a topic that we have brought up before on this podcast, the courts have suspended the prison sentence of the man who made a meme about Hillary Clinton. So a federal appellate court has suspended the 7-month federal prison sentence that was handed down back in October to Douglas Mackey, who posted a satirical meme instructing people to vote for Hillary Clinton via text message in 2016. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals has just overruled the district court in granting the motion for bond pending appeal, Mackey announced in a Twitter post. So the ruling is huge because it means that the appeals court decided that the appeal presents substantial and debatable issues of the law. They wouldn't do it otherwise. And he believes that his conviction will be vacated. In the end, of course, he wants to believe that it will be vacated. So Mackey's meme again said, "Save time, avoid the line, vote from home." And he was accused of election interference and deliberately misleading voters by highlighting his conservative-leaning internet activity. So they said because he's a conservative and made this, it was election interference, and this is why. The thing is, there was a Democrat-aligned activist who did the exact same thing, only it said Trump instead of Hillary Clinton. She was not prosecuted.
Of course not. Nor was Hillary Clinton, for coming up with a major hoax, which was big-time election tampering.
Absolutely. So we'll see. We'll follow up with this. We'll see what happens. But as of now, he's being granted bail and a stay of the imposition of his sentence.
Good. I hope that they throw the whole case out.
They absolutely need to. I think it's a level of ridiculousness that we should not see here in the United States, but unfortunately,
we do every election cycle, and that's why I have said multiple times, and I said it a couple weeks ago, we need to wipe out all of the voter rolls after the election's over. 100% of everyone that's living and working and that is able to vote legally in the U.S. should go re-register. We want to know who they are, and we should have the patterns all set up for the voting machines, for the paper ballots, and how we sign them off, how we count them, and how we pick our leaders.
Agreed.
I just am tired of the same old thing, That really was a gut punch with this Nikki Haley thing, because I was really starting to think maybe she had potential. Maybe she's someone. But when you change rules, when you're a governor, so a corporation can come and do business in your state, and then a year after you're out of office, you become a board of directors leader on that corporation's shingle, then I see a problem with that.
I agree. I see a problem with that. I see a problem the same way our generals, when they go and they retire from the government and then they go work for the military-linked companies that they've been doing business with for who knows how many years, and they become their leadership over there. I have a problem with that.
Yes.
I have a problem with any congressperson, any senator that does that as well. You should not be able to take your relationship built when you were in government and turn that into a money-making scheme as soon as you...
multi-million-dollar scheme. No, it's
because did you ever have the government's best interest at heart when you were working with him, because you seem to have made a connection that has paid you out on the backside.
See, you're right. And that goes exactly to what they're accusing Biden of doing, which is using his position of power to help make policy to enrich his son, which means that these congressmen, senators, and appointed people, when they get out of positions of power and they become lobbyists, they're doing the exact same thing. And
there should be a ban on lobbying.
Yes. And like you said, did they always have the government's best interest at heart, or were they positioning themselves for a future career where they could line their pockets? And it's kind of interesting for years, because because I know so much about them, we'll take Navy SEALs or the teams. They did everything behind the scenes and in the shadows for years, and they never came out and talked about what they were doing. And when they did, they finally decided to start writing books. They started telling part of their stories, not the classified or the secret stuff, but they started letting people know through YouTube, through videos, and through discussions what this thing was all about. Congress went nuts trying to ban them from making money outside of their careers like they were doing.
Right. You can't talk about the is, but we can talk about the is.
Yes.
Who do you think you are? And we do see people going out and talking about what their history was, and none of it to the detriment of the United States. Generally, if you write a book and you had a clearance, you actually have to turn over that book and get some permission if you're going to write about certain stories or certain things. Generally speaking.
Unless your name is Swalwell.
Then you can do whatever you want.
Then you can do whatever you want. You can stay in office. You're not in a leadership position, but you can still hold a security clearance, knowing that at one point in time you were having an affair with a Chinese spy.
You got honey trapped.
Yes.
That's on him.
100%.
So in other news, we have Supreme Court hearings that can actually have implications for Trump's case, some of his cases. So the Supreme Court could potentially indirectly intervene in the January 6th related charges against Donald Trump, should it choose to hear the appeals of 3 January 6th protesters charged with obstructing an official proceeding. They are currently considering 3 appeals from Joseph Fisher, Edward Lang, and Garrett Miller. And initially, the court was to consider the cases during their regular weekly meetings, but after Justice Sandra Day O'Connor passed away, they canceled the meeting in which they were going to consider these particular cases. Fisher, Lang, and Miller are seeking to have the charge against them dismissed in an overextension of 18 U.S.C. 1512 C2, which establishes efforts to corruptly obstruct, influence, or impede any official proceeding. And so with the DOJ, they said that an official proceeding included meetings of Congress. And if our listeners recall, there have been meetings of Congress that have been obstructed by, 1, members of Congress, Hakeem Jeffries, recently pulling that fire alarm. But 2, we had people doing sit-ins, protests, whatever you want to call them, and it ultimately obstructed meetings being held by Congress. So they're claiming that it's an overextension of the law. So potentially, if they do decide that this is overextended, it could affect Trump's case and anyone else who is similarly situated like they are. So we'll see. We'll see how it impacts. We'll do some follow-ups on that. But the Supreme Court is potentially going to hear cases that would impact Trump's case.
It's going to be interesting to see how it goes, because this is nothing but politicking. All they're trying to do is keep him off the ballot or taint him so he can't run.
Yes, and the keeping him off the ballot so far has been unsuccessful in many states. The judges in those states have said no dice. And
he's not been convicted of anything, correct?
Correct.
So then how are you going to keep him off of a ballot if he hasn't been convicted of anything?
And the other claims are that only the January 6th related charges can potentially impact him as far as being allowed to run for president. All of the rest of the charges, the claim is that those wouldn't actually impact his ability.
All he has to do is
run.
move to California, claim to be Mrs. Trump, then he can run as a different person.
Right. He's a totally different person at that point.
Person at that point.
Yeah. So, and then, well, just keeping up with Trump, actually, the Georgia judge isn't sure Trump can be tried if he wins the White House. So if the case doesn't get over with, this judge, if he's elected, this judge is not certain that he could be tried.
He's not, because you cannot indict a sitting president. So he would
prosecute. Yes.
He would have to go the 4 years.
And then after.
Or they would have to cook up another hoax, and it would have to be a Democratic-led House, Democratic-led Senate.
Impeach him again.
They would have to impeach him again for the third time and convict and remove from office. But you know what? There's a lot of Democrats out there that are coming out and saying, you know what? We need this guy back in office. He did a lot of good. So we shall see.
We'll see which way it ends up going.
How turbulent the times get here in America over the next year. I'm moving to the Tuamotus, so it's okay.
Are you now?
Yes.
You out?
I'm going to convince my heart surgeon to move to the Tuamotus just to be in the general vicinity in case I ever need her services in the future, which I hope to God I don't.
Me too.
Yeah.
She's excellent.
Yes.
But definitely don't want to have the need for her services.
No.
Again.
And today is actually 3 months since the surgery.
Happy 90 days?
Yes. 90 days. Very much so.
So do you remember when we talked about U.S. Senator Menendez and how he had
Mr. Gold Bar Menendez?
22 gold bars and $500,000 in cash. They found a stash of gold bars in cash, and when asked about it, Bob Menendez said he didn't trust the banks. And because he didn't trust the banks, he stuffed cash in gold bars as his way of keeping money.
Is he from Cuba?
I believe so.
Well, I wouldn't trust the banks either.
But it turns out that the gold bars were stolen during an armed robbery in New Jersey with a New Jersey real estate businessman.
And we know that because
there was the robbery report, and in this report, he said the 22 gold bars and $500,000 cash were taken from him, and he signed documents certifying that the bars belonged to him and could be identified by unique serial numbers. So each gold bar has its own unique serial number. They're all stamped, and you will never see two stamped in the same way. So ultimately, 4 individuals were arrested for that crime. And a decade later, the gold bars surfaced at the home of Menendez and his wife, who have both been charged with taking bribes in exchange for using the senator's leverage in Washington. So it's kind of interesting that he ends up with a gold bar that
At least he didn't have his money in the freezer.
Oh,
just
like
that other
Louisiana?
Yeah, the Louisiana congressman.
Yes, after Hurricane Katrina.
Yes, and the National Guard was going to the house, to, I believe, to rescue him and pull him out of the house. Is that what it was?
They were going house to house to rescue everyone that needed rescue.
They must have opened the freezer up for a popsicle or something, and whoa, look at this. All this money we've got in here. How'd you get that money?
Don't know what you're talking about, sir.
Make any fives with that?
Right. Yeah, so just a little interesting tidbit there with those gold bars.
Yeah, those gold bars are going to be part of his undoing, as they should be.
Absolutely.
Should have melted them down and made jewelry out of them.
Make gold toilets.
Then there would have been no gold fillings and gold teeth. Would have been no identifiable serial numbers. But you know what? Narcissists and sociopaths don't think of it that way, because he was busted once before doing something wrong.
And he got away with it. Went to trial,
got away with it. So in his mind, he felt he was untouchable.
Right.
I'm sure. He
was already, and they're not going to look again. Why would they look again? They already looked at him once. So he's past that. He should be able to do whatever. Yeah. In other news, Kevin McCarthy is saying that he's going to resign from Congress.
Yeah, I have a problem with that.
Why is that?
because he's not the only one leaving. And Congress has a very small margin. And I made a comment, I believe to you and to others possibly, that this may be something that we're going to find out later on was a backdoor deal so they would not go after Biden because the House is going to flip.
It's going to flip and people resigning, that it will go the other way.
They're very close to it because there's 2 congressmen right now. We personally, not me personally, but we just booted one out.
Yes, we just booted a Republican.
Santos, right?
Yes, and now McCarthy is saying that he is going to be done.
There's another one leaving at the end of the year, I believe. So then also the number 2 guy within the House Judiciary, he's in a minority role. He's a minority leader. He has supposedly been meeting with Republicans behind closed doors to try to thwart this impeachment inquiry. So I believe all of the planets are lining up, and they're doing this to protect this old man.
So once McCarthy was out, they realized that they needed to basically call in their cards on whoever they had info on.
Yes.
Yes, because it's not just people deciding not to seek re-election. I mean, that's fine. Don't seek re-election. You have 2 years. You signed up for 2 years. Okay, don't seek re-election. But here, we're seeing, I believe it's up to 13 plus now, possibly 15, that are going to, the ones that are going to be done, but now you see the ones that are going to give up early. And that is just unacceptable.
It is. And you know, the sad thing of this is I actually thought at one time that Gates was a decent congressman. Until all of this happened with what he did here. And this could possibly change the balance of power in the House. So then all this hard work is going to get shelved again, and they won't look at it ever. Kind of like the Epstein thing in the Senate.
Oh, yeah, blocking it.
Blocking the logbooks of the pilot. And that's interesting because unless there's some type of court order or something, we put laws in place. It's the pilot's logbook. He flies the airplane. Obviously, there's logs that stay with the airplane for maintenance, but there's also a log that the pilots and the FOs keep. And if it was always the same pilot flying for him,
he would know.
He has his own logbooks.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is go to this lady that's rotting away in prison now, living in a 5-star prison, and ask her where.
Oh, Ghislaine Maxwell?
Yeah, where the logbooks are. Where's your book? She could tell you. She's not giving them away to keep herself from committing suicide by a little bit of help. With the help of a friend.
A friend of a friend.
Friend of a friend.
A friend of a friend.
Yes.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see if it does switch, if it does sway. And if we see that, we will know that the fix was in. As soon as that flip started happening and they're all not just not seeking re-election, they'll be friends with Ghislaine Maxwell soon enough. So let's talk a little bit about Israel. We've been seeing a lot of young individuals who are rallying and supporting not just Palestine, but essentially Hamas. They're claiming it under the guise of supporting Palestine, but then they are chanting from the river to the sea. They're talking about the end of Israel. They are talking about how essentially no Jewish state should be allowed to exist, but they don't see it as anti-Semitic. They don't see it as anti the Jewish people, anti-Israel. They just see it as this location is rightfully only the people of Palestine. They believe Palestine should be its own independent state encompassing from the river to the sea. And it's generally a lot of younger individuals who tend to be espousing this belief system. And in fact, here in Fresno, we just had a flag raising ceremony for the Palestinian flag. And they had speakers who were speaking regarding the situation. And then one of them into the microphone did start chanting from the river to the sea. Well, now we also have the Council on American Islamic Relations group. who the White House had listed as a group committed to combating anti-Semitism. Well, now the White House has had to distance itself from that group after the leader praised Hamas's October 7th slaughter. So the Council on American Islamic Relations leader said he was happy to see Palestinians in Gaza break the siege during Hamas's deadly October 7th terrorist attack against Israel. And so now it was done in a video, so now that video is making the rounds. So this anti-Semitism friend is apparently no longer a friend to the cause.
That's what happens when you don't educate our youth properly.
I mean, if you say Israel as an occupying power does not have the right to self-defense, so they had no right to defend themselves and no right to do anything about the terrorist attack against them.
So when does somebody actually look at the amount of time that Israel's been there and say that, oh yeah, maybe they do have the right to this land or to be here or to exist? Is 3,000 years not enough?
It is not. Apparently, if you look in the Quran, it is mentioned that Israel will come back and be a state. Even in the Quran, but they are unaccepting of Israel coming back and being a state.
Right. They're wanting to rewrite biblical history.
Definitely wants to rewrite history, and our youngins across all of these colleges are definitely in the belief system that they don't have the right to exist. And if you look at the college leaders, you can look at the leaders and see the problem. So you had the presidents of Harvard, UPenn, and MIT came in front of Congress to talk about different things that were going on within their colleges. And you had Congresswoman Elise Stefanik repeatedly ask the presidents of these colleges whether or not calling for the genocide of Jews constituted bullying and harassment. And all three were giving answers that basically said, well, it depends on the context.
They were trying to make political answers.
Yes.
They were trying to answer politically when in their minds they had to know what the answer was. And I'm glad that one of them so far
has
resigned because of her statements. And it's cost that university over $100 million in donations.
Yes. So you had these college presidents. Now, the colleges themselves, as you noted, are losing money because a lot of individuals who are Jewish have been giving money to these universities for years. And they are also left-leaning individuals who supported these colleges. And they are realizing that the colleges they like Jewish money. They don't like the Jewish people.
So you can't buy friendships.
You cannot buy friendships.
No. You can't buy equality. You can't buy friendships. It does not work.
And I'm just amazed because there's a lot of young individuals who needed safe spaces, who said words are violence, and they had to create a lot of, if you say something against the LGBTQIA community, if you say something against the African American community, if you say something against the Hispanic community, Asian community, insert any of these communities, you would absolutely lose your spot at that school. They were working on disavowing you, kicking you out. You are going against their student code of ethics, all of that. But when asked if calling for the genocide of a people is acceptable or not at their university, they said, well, it depends on context.
So what do you think they would have said if they would have brought up black people? Do you call for the termination or the extermination of the black race in America? Is that anti-Semitism?
Well, it's not anti-Semitism, is it? It's just not okay as long as it's not Jewish people. It's not okay language. It's not okay terminology. It's not an okay thing to say unless you are Jewish. If you are Jewish, then you can say exterminate them all you want. So in addition to all of these individuals pulling their money back now, we've seen it over and over. A few other things have come out of this situation, which is for individuals who have been left-leaning, who are also Jewish, coming to the realization that they've been totally wrong about anti-Semitism on the left. That, in fact, that there is rising anti-Semitism, and he thought, Sam Altman of OpenAI, the founder and CEO, thought that it was not as bad as people were claiming until we started seeing
that it's as bad as we're claiming.
That it is as bad as they are claiming. He said he thought for the longest time that anti-Semitism, especially on the American left, were not what people were saying that it was. And he's now saying, I got it totally wrong.
It's bad. And it begs the question, especially for people that follow no religion, because they don't understand the history, why the Jewish people are so hated.
So speaking of people being hated, so the Daily Wire has actually joined a lawsuit with the Federalist and the state of Texas against the U.S. State Department over its censorship efforts. So they have all joined against Biden's State Department, and they are alleging that the government agency funded censorship technology designed to bankrupt conservative media outlets. The lawsuit says that the case is one of the most audacious, manipulative, secretive, and gravest abuses of power and infringements on the First Amendment rights by the federal government in American history.
And I believe it.
Yes, because the U.S. State Department is funding the development, testing, and marketing of censorship technology, which would be against First Amendment protected speech by American media outlets such as the Daily Wire and the Federalist.
Which would be vote tampering.
It would be. And they use the Global Engagement Center to finance the development and promotion of censorship technology and enterprises, including organizations like NewsGuard and Global Disinformation Index. Our State Department is funding, through grants, the very companies that are working to censor.
And probably when we send people overseas to watch other elections in other countries, third world countries, are probably testing their software and their
over there and
yes.
see how it can be done. So I did have two more things on Biden. Wanted to note that Biden's address of record had the suspicious activities reports that would go on. The banks had filed 6 suspicious activity reports flagging the home address of Joe Biden when he was a senator. Just something to throw it out there that the transactions were going on while he was a senator, and it was using his home address. So in all likelihood, it was his son using Biden's home address. But for the, we never talked, we never did anything, we didn't do anything that mattered, we only talked about being father-son, we are seeing over and over again that intermingling. He's using Joe Biden's address.
And he made that statement yesterday, he being Biden, that it never happened.
There is no is.
There is no is.
Yes. So it did happen. But we all know how Joe Biden likes to lie. That's the second thing I wanted to bring up. He has another lie, a lie in which we can go back in history and look for truth. And it would either say that, yes, I did this, or no, I didn't. So the White House was hosting Tribal Nation Summit, and he lied to the crowd about his personal anecdote from his old high school days involving a tough choice that he had between playing lacrosse and playing football. Joe Biden claimed, I wanted to play lacrosse, but you had to choose between lacrosse and football. You couldn't play both in the same season. I was a runner-up of state scoring champion. Don't laugh at me, man. So anyway, he's giving this anecdote that he had to choose between lacrosse and football when he attended high school. But it turns out that his school did not have a boys lacrosse team until 1993, 32 years after Biden had graduated. So it's just a little white lie.
Just a little one.
Like, who cares? Your personal life, whether you played football or you played lacrosse. I understand you're trying to make a connection with people, but if we can show over and over and over again that he's willing to lie about things that can be proven, do you really think any of these other things he's not lying about?
He's lying about all of them. That's why I'd never trust one thing that he ever said in any of his books. Because he's a habitual liar. Or is it a pathological liar?
Pathological and habitual. He's both. We can use both.
He's a non-truth teller.
He is a non-truth teller.
This has been a podcast produced and edited by the Dirt Sailor Duo.
Mark and Shannon are a father-daughter team who both served in the United States Navy. This production is protected by copyright laws. Until next time, anchors away.